Here, we'll tell. I'll turn all our voices so everyone can hear us screwing up. So it'll be a lot funnier for everyone. I know, eh? Had this going just perfect a second ago. Why is my display capture not showing my screen? It's where it's all black.
It's part of the brand.
It is. It is all perfect, isn't it? Here I am trying to do it all, and at least they can hear us now. That's good. So what is it that I'm doing wrong? I'll steal the screen back from you just to be sure. Okay. Actually, I'll leave it right there for now because it's fine, because I think it's on my end right here, because it's not showing the screen as a, you know, screen 1 and screen 2.
We've got some comments on the YouTube already, Neil. I don't know if you're, but they're coming up. They're hot.
Oh, I'm sure. They're like, oh my God, you're a bunch of fools. Really?
The people want to know if they can ask random questions.
Oh, I'm sure they're going to anyway, so that's perfectly fine. Oh.
I got a flash of something.
Yeah, it was up a second ago.
Yeah, I went to screen 1. Screen 1 showing. For some reason, screen 2 is not showing. I don't know why. I can move everything over to the other screen. That's what I'll have to do. This is going to be friggin' hilarious. All right, so.
Eugene the philosopher has joined us, gentlemen.
Oh, excellent. Just to watch us mess up for everybody. It's fantastic.
Yes.
What's the website so I can put it in my community?
The Electric View live stream.
Okay.
All right, so turn it over to this
the
screen.
Electric View's main web page, Greg.
And if I go over here, now I'm going to change the display to the other screen, which now should be, it's going to have things at the bottom of it, but whatever, it should work. I have no idea how this screen just suddenly no longer wanted to be shared. Like, and the other one's working fine. Like, no reason to see. There you go. You should have it there. Just ridiculous. But you know what? That's what it's all about, isn't it? Okay. And stop doing all the clicky stuff. I don't know why you're clicking. Stop your clicking.
Oh, that's me. That's me. I'm sorry.
All right, guys. Well, let's see if we can not make that mistake again. Oh, my goodness. So, everyone, welcome, Greg J. Good to have you on.
Thank you.
Oh, what fun. Literally, I just tested this. I have no idea why. I was just a few minutes ago. I was like going, oh, yeah, everything works. Lined up everything. Perfect to go. So,
you don't have to tell me. I know. Did you see the debacle I had with my live stream?
No, I didn't. What happened there?
Oh, well, just watch it. You'll see it. I did the video, which is my forte, and it turned out okay. But the version when we were actually live streaming was just awful. I couldn't hear him. Then he was too loud. It was all me, my rookiness.
Later on, I'll tell you what, Greg. I'll tell you all of the crazy stuff I had to go through, and sound was one of it. And and eventually I've learned the little tricks to make this. Now I've got it doing it, so it's doing it live, so it's doing it instantly. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you'll have to fill me in later when we're here out of company time. Okay.
So we also have here. We also have, let me get my Skype up so I can see all the wonderful people in the chat. Okay. 10 people here. Let me make it even wider so I can actually see everyone.
Real quick, is it the Electric View?
It is.
Or just Electric View?
The Electric View.
I put the link in the chat window there for you, Greg.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, where are you guys chatting at? In the chat window of the video?
Of the Skype.
Of Skype, yeah.
But there's also a chat in the live view of the
right
Electric View too. So.
Okay, I got it.
Right now, I only have a picture of your webpage up. That's what everyone should be seeing, hopefully.
And to make it easy, I just put it up in the Electric View live stream.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go over who's here because I'm just impressed with the number of people. So we have let's see, Matt. He's from what coast are you from? You're like, you're close to Wales, or what coast are you on of England there, Matt? Or he could not be here and could be on his phone, so I'm not going to bug him. Oh, wait, he's talking.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me.
I can.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. I'm over on the East Coast at Norfolk.
There you
England.
go. Perfect. We have Chris Kelly as well. He's also in England there. We met at Bath, so that's great. And I met Matt in 2016. Sean, of course, from Philadelphia. We have Buddy. Chris from Take Back Space. We have Rick. We have Duffster, we'll call you. And then we'll go with, of course, we have Greg. And Michael Armstrong is joining us from Thunderbolts on Fillo, Miramar Publishing. I don't want to know if I'm saying that right. And
yes.
Perfect. And of course, myself, Rory, welcoming Greg on right now. I'm going to go and we'll do the actual little preview intro now that I got everything working. And roll from there, my friends. Phil, great to have you, Greg. I can't wait to hear what you have to tell us. We've already been talking already a little bit, guys, so it's a lot of Saturnian stuff is coming to you down the pipe now. So we're going to welcome your questions. Welcome to the September 22nd edition of the Electric View. I'm Neil Thompson. Today we are talking to Greg J., whose fantastic work explores the catastrophist side of the electric universe and all that entails. Join us as we explore this wonderful world. He promises to make up for missing us last week because of a computer issue. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and all that other wonderful stuff. All right, well, we're back then. So, Greg, then I was we were having a wonderful discussion about how you got into this, and lo and behold, one of the people who helped you get into this just suddenly popped on the channel. So I know that also the Duffster had a question for you as well. So I want to start off with that, and we'll take questions from you guys in the audience as well. So. Right, Jim, you can take care of that too, I'm sure. Or Rick, sorry.
I'm just about to post this link in my community so my peeps know.
Well, I'd like to start off just quickly and ask him one question before Duff gets going.
Sure.
What was it that got you into the electric universe to begin with?
Wallace Thornhill.
Was it any particular video, and how many years ago?
Yeah, it was either late 2014 or early 2015.
Oh, you're just a new guy then.
Oh yeah, I've only been. That's right, but I've been ready since I was a child. Seriously, I mean, I always knew that electricity had a lot more to do with nature than they were letting on. I just always had that feeling, and the way that they buried Tesla. You know, it had to be an indicator too. And I, of course, Wall thinks it's an accident of history, and it could very well be. But I mean, I guess I don't have that much faith after, all these, you find out all these things you thought was ridiculous turn out to be true. It kind of lets you think on the other side of the tracks. And well, I came up on a video. I always watch cosmology videos. It's my favorite subject. And, amongst other things, but that's right up there at the top. And I saw a new video. It said, understanding the path of the 21st century, something like that, understanding gravity. And I was right away, I was attracted to the title. And
I know which video that is.
Yeah. And, it's the one where the sun is sinking in the 20th century. And it's a nice touch. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's good.
Anyways, where was I? Oh, yeah. So I just happened to listen to it. And I think within the first minute and a half, he had me, because I thought, yeah. I've always been, what about that too? Yeah, he's right. And that's what you really have to do when you go into something like that. That's brand new. You have to he has to strike a chord with you and something that you have experienced or felt too. And he did.
Right.
And I was like, I went on a binge watch for everything Thunderbolts for about, I don't know. It took a while. They had quite a few videos, maybe a couple weeks, month. And then I made a big playlist and I'd go to sleep with it on, wake up with it on. I did that for a couple months, and I got to know who the people were, and not the insiders or that, but the people that are, the main face. And I started reading the articles. I went to Hollow Science. I listened to every Wall Thornhill interview that I could find. And, some of the offshoots were cool too, because after you can't get enough of them, I got to go over here and get some of this, so I listened to Talbot, of course. And, it just took off like a rocket. And what made me start doing videos is I've always been kind of a hack songwriter. I love music, and it's just I have since I was a kid, listening to my mom listening to Elvis. But I just incorporated that. I wanted to write a video, or like make a music video. That's my first intention. And
I know that feeling. I made when I got some music, I did the same thing. You could still on the intro of my channel. So
yeah, I'm babbling away here. Go ahead.
Please babble.
Well, no. For me, it was just Symbols of an Alien Sky. I was in the history side, and I was looking at the history, and that popped up one day, and it just blew me away. And from there, I knew, and I spent 2 years watching every single video, and sometimes a bunch of them twice, and it was quite amazing to me that this story was out there, and that people haven't realized, the truth. I mean, I consider it the best truth that we have out there.
Absolutely.
Considering how much it has a potential to change the way that we think about ourselves and our connection with the universe, I would have to agree. I mean, even if other parts are wrong, but it, as Michael can attest to, it allows us to see these parts of ourselves again. And to see what we were doing or what we are doing sometimes is just passing traumas down unknowingly.
Yeah. Year after year after war after year after war. Okay. Thank you for that, Greg. I think we should hand the mic over to Duff. He was raring to go, and I interrupted. Sorry, Duff.
Not at all. No, I think what your question is certainly a priority with respect to understanding Greg and knowing him better. And I think, Greg, what you're sharing is really something of a litmus test or a rite of passage for all of us who've come to the electric universe theory and the amazing substance that is plasma. I mean, we all have a story, and I think the truth of the matter is it becomes. I'm on a sculpting jag right now, and so I'm in this really sort of obsessive phase of like producing something I see in my mind,
right?
And it's exactly what you're describing. This idea of pursuing this truth, and one thing leads to another, and one speaker and one idea and one person leads to another person, and it really does. It's amazing that we've all sort of come to this apex and a crossroads with each other to the extent that. There really is a brotherhood that's happening and forming, and it's amazing to me. And that I can just listen to you and know automatically that I'm going to completely identify with the process that led you to, this very conversation. So I appreciate that backstory is crucial and absolutely the most important thing that everybody wants to know about. Okay. We're all sort of like fans of each other, and I know we really are, and that's amazing. And that's admiration and respect that men have for each other when they set aside their differences and start looking at what they can agree on. And I know that you have a story to tell about Michael, and I know he's here, so I wonder if you'd be willing to share that story with us.
Right now, you want me to tell you how I got to know Mike the first time? He doesn't remember though, so I'm kind of off the hook.
Well, I think the fact that he doesn't remember is kind of hilarious, and humbling.
That is true.
Because I've been carrying around guilt for the last 2 years.
And it also allows us to introduce Michael as well. So tell your damn story.
Okay, well, I did the song Electric Universe, and I went to the website, and I believe it all started when I asked them for permission to use some of their stuff in my video. I don't want to, I hate it when my son, where's my mute button? Sinus time, folks. Anyways.
It's understandable.
Let's see, where was I? Oh, so I emailed them asking for permission, and they gave me permission. I said, yeah, sure, just provide a link back. That was what it said. I said, okay. And someone had emailed me named Mike that was from Thunderbolts. I didn't know who it was. I just thought it was just someone like me, And because I think the message I left was more on a board and not in an email. So he said, would you be interested in making some videos for me? I'm looking for a video maker. And I went, well, I haven't even made a video for myself yet, so I don't really know about that. So I thought about it, and I said, well, let me see the work that you've got. And he sent me these files that were just humongous. And I'm like, whoa, I'm doing my thing on a free movie maker and Audacity, and I think this is way over my head. So I just kind of shrunk away from that. I should have been more of a man about it and been honest and said, I can't do this. This is, that's why I apologized to him, but he didn't remember. So I feel like I'm off the hook now. I felt guilty about that for 3 years.
You're totally off the hook. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I think you really exemplify the sort of respect that we have for each other, and the way that I feel that way all the time. I'm not a physicist or anything. I spend most of my time alone because people freak me out. To be perfectly honest. And so
little did I know.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
My point is that you shared your humanity with us, and by doing so, you're able to exemplify what it means to you to have a conversation with someone like Michael, and that really does speak to the kinds of intellects that we're talking about. These are people that really do step outside the norm to think literally. This is what free thinking is really all about, and you are our brother, sure.
Well, thank you.
You've earned your stripes. And I wonder sometimes that I've earned mine, but you certainly have earned mine.
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering now if we're bringing back the sort of.
Well, it had to be that Michael,
It had to be.
Neil.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's amazing.
Yes,
awesome.
Yes, Rick.
Quick question: would you give Chris permission to broadcast this broadcast on YouTube if he went live with it?
I actually can't right now, but I am going to share it with my followers.
Oh, okay, never mind.
I don't have the setup. Sorry.
So you guys,
I would.
You guys aren't doing YouTube? This isn't YouTube?
This is
I just wanted
YouTube.
you guys to be aware the screen is nothing but static. You guys know that, right?
What?
That's new to
The
me.
screen, like what I'm seeing is nothing but static. You do know that, right?
Why are you seeing static?
No idea, man. I'm just on the call.
I think that's just
Oh,
that's just in Skype.
Oh, that's just in Skype. Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
you made me
Making sure
scared
you
there
knew.
for a second. Oh, there we go.
YouTube
Just
is up
saw a
and
bunch of
running.
files of the church there in my hard drive. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
YouTube.
to answer your question, Greg, we're live on YouTube right now, but I was asking if Chris wanted to broadcast this as it was going on in his YouTube channel. We're going to give him permission to do that.
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah, I just don't have it set up today. Unfortunately, I would, but
I should have
prepped.
be recording this. This is good.
Oh,
Hey,
don't
Neil?
worry. You're going to be seeing it. It'll be up already for everyone. So.
Varied Axeblade has a question.
Oh, yes. What's he have to
He
say?
has a cool name, so I thought I'd mention it.
He does, actually. These are
He
most of
says,
the people from the Discord channel, guys. So.
Yeah. He says, if Mars has the star, is Venus under the clouds really a double-lobed planet?
Say that again.
If Mars has the scar, is Venus under her clouds really a double-lobed planet?
A double-lobed planet. I'm not.
I think he's like referring to the asteroids that we're finding. I don't think so. I think it's round. It's just it's still in its cometary state at 864 degrees, hot enough to bake a pizza pie.
The reason,
as far as I know, Venus is very similarly shaped to Earth. But what we do know is that there are several almost Olympus Mons-shaped, or sized volcanoes underneath there, and they're still pretty hot and active, from what I understand.
Venus is rounder. That's why it has such a round orbit. It was sculpted. It was machine arced.
Yeah,
it has a birthmark all the way around the middle of it too.
Yeah, yes, it does. That's where Saturn was arcing it. When it was given that beautiful plume on Saturn, it was being machine arced the whole time.
That's
why the Indian headdress feathers are a remembrance of that heavy arcing that was going on that we couldn't see because she was in cometary state, being excited in glow mode.
Yeah, that's why there's no regolith on Venus. There's no dirt and
just
the
rocks.
hydrocarbons, in the atmosphere.
Which is another good question. Why are there rocks everywhere? Where'd they fall from? Like Mars is just covered with rocks. It's like there's literally a 4-ton boulder sitting out here in the middle of nowhere. Where the heck did that come from?
Well, that's what happens when your surface gets stripped away.
No, it's just, why don't you ask those simple questions? I find that to be baffling. Like
I know.
Like what you pointed out there, Greg. This is one of the things I didn't even think about this, but I know it to be true just as much as I know about the stories about people talking about Mars having 2 moons. There was the incident of knowing that Saturn was in chains. And I just watched that video, and I was like, yeah, holy crap, or Jupiter
mummified
being
like
the band of
Egyptians.
gods, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's just that doesn't that prove something? Either it proves they had telescopes, or
or the gods were very, very close. Yeah,
which is disturbing.
Hey, Chihuahua.
So, please, does anyone have any questions for our good friend here? You said you just started with a movie maker. That's all you started with. I like how you took the bull by the horns and just dove in.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of always been my style. I'm a lefty, and we have to improvise. So,
fair enough.
Yeah.
Lefties unite.
Yes.
We're in our right brains, Greg. We're in our right brain.
That's right.
Wait, is this political lefties?
No, left-handedness, weirdos.
No.
We've
been discriminated against.
It's totally a handed thing, not about politics.
No, that's what that's true. I mean, it took us a long time to accept left-handed people as human beings. So, we can do anything.
Yeah, you're weird.
Oh, my father's left-handed too. It was the same thing.
Weird. I love being weird.
Well, stuff that you come up.
Sorry.
I noticed that you focus on a lot of different. Well, look at this editorial section by Michael Armstrong right on the screen right now.
Oh, you're on my screen?
I'm watching Archetypes in Ancient Myth and the Polar Configuration by David Talbot. I'm broadcasting that while we're talking.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to say, your it looks like your little circle is going round and round on YouTube.
For who?
It moved. You got to refresh.
Oh,
I'm watching it, guys, so don't worry.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Oh,
wow.
yeah. Okay, cool.
Is it working for you yet, Raymond? Did you refresh the page?
I refreshed it. Works now. For me, at least.
As long as.
Greg, sorry, Rick, are you asking me? I'm not on YouTube. I'm just listening.
Oh, in Skype. Okay, gotcha. Never mind.
Greg?
Yes.
I did want to say, with regard to the focus on sacrifice and those things.
Yeah.
That I hadn't I had mentioned this before, and I didn't want to sort of like sissy out and not say it to you now. But the truth of the matter is that it's crucial that have that component of our history is not hidden, and it's not kept from us. The fact of the matter is that we do suffer from a great trauma, and that we are acting out a great trauma in our mythology and our ritual, and in overt ways and in subtle ways that we don't even necessarily notice. Christ and crucifixion and salvation by sacrifice, and these concepts are deeply rooted within us, and I think they're important to say. And I would also say that at some point, I think we have to understand that history is written by the victor, and so we never truly have the story of the person who's being crucified. We only have the story of the political reasons or the military reasons for these public displays or even private displays of cruelty and murderous behavior. But I guess I feel like at the end of the day, I want to know what has always been great about us and what has always been good about us, and what that commonality is between us that makes us capable of overcoming and achieving in the face of diversity, as opposed to sort of just the raw horror that is murdering babies as a sacrifice to some god. And so that would be my only critique of your work. Would be just less baby killing.
I didn't see any baby killing in the stuff I've actually worked on, so I'm not really sure.
It was only one video, and it was it was Troy's video, Saturn Death Cult. But I do believe that it is important that people know that this twisted element is out there.
Yeah,
so we can fight it.
What came through in the video for me was, even though I was horrified by the content, what came through in the video with me was that your heart was breaking for these ancient wrongs, and that then became the reason why I subscribed to your channel.
Of course, yes.
Your heart was in the right place.
Eyes wide open. Eyes wide open, folks.
That matters to me. Like, you're willing to sort of go through the emotional experience of, this is what these people must have gone through, and I think when we do have in our midst today someone who understands that ancient traumatic experience and how it affects us, even in our culture today. And so I think that's what makes it so gratuitous and such an amazing opportunity for us to get together and chat, because we've got Michael here who can tell us that's his life work about really about those kinds of behaviors and why they happened, and why we still sort of understand some of those archetypes today.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that. Yeah, I know he's good.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, one of the important books that can be read and sheds some light on this, even though the author, Chaim Maccabee, didn't really understand the larger picture, but he wrote a book called The Sacred Executioner. So I recommend that book to everybody.
The Sacred Executioner by who?
Chaim Maccabee.
Okay. I will get it.
Yeah, Maccabee wrote other books. He was an eminent Jewish scholar, and had a real thing about or against Christianity. And so he was like a lawyer in his approach. What a lawyer does is tries to emphasize and establish all the facts on one side of the case and diminish or ignore or refute all the facts on the other side of the case. So,
which isn't right.
That is not right. That is not the pathway to truth. Absolutely.
That's right.
So, but that doesn't mean that one cannot read a work by such a man and glean incredibly pertinent information. And so that's why I recommend the Sacred Executioner.
Okay. Okay. I will definitely get it. Probably read some of it.
We also have to give credit where credit is due to some of these. I mean, if it wasn't for the unification of government and religion, I mean, the Byzantium Empire would have fallen a long time ago, and we wouldn't have nearly as much, history, because it would have been destroyed. I mean, most of the stuff that we know that basically we call European history of the Greeks and Romans and stuff was all held and hidden by other cultures, you know, once the new establishment came in and said, no, this is all heresy and bad stuff and, you know, trash.
Yeah, and it all got carried to Ireland, which played a major role in saving European civilization and the knowledge about it.
And they were vilified too by the Romans, if I remember in their stories. They talked about how bad those people up there were.
Yeah.
Yeah, the battles of when the Christians moved in were ferocious.
Well, no, I didn't mean that. I mean the Romans. When the Romans were there, they referred to the how bad they referred to the people up that way.
Right, I got you.
Which is good, because if you were to run away from people that were there now killing people around, you go, well, where did they not go? Let's just run to the end of the continent, because they don't like those people up there. They think they're crazy monster people. You know, I would go anywhere away. But anyway.
Neil, a lot of that's propaganda, because Caesar had an impossible task.
That's exactly what I was emphasizing. Yes.
He couldn't conquer, so that was what they did. Was they came back and they spread that propaganda, but then they went and they started marrying from their nobility. Intermarried Brits. Yeah,
I did know that.
They were able then to tap into the Trojan origins of those people. But even though that they did that, and there were some betrayals from the Brits towards the Romans, they weren't ever able to conquer the core of the Celtic peoples. So they ended up emphasizing the bringing of Picts and other races around them to try and mitigate their power, so they didn't feel threatened back on the continent.
That's actually very interesting. The more you know.
Someone made a comment once that always stuck in my head. It's all of the great empires of the past began as a benevolent republic and eventually got corrupted and fell. Now, what do you see today? It's like we're repeating the same thing. How many times do we have to repeat the same thing over and over before we finally get it together?
Well, I think Mike and James Conway could talk about that.
It's interesting that you bring up repeating, and somebody mentioned earlier these themes that keep coming up. Saw 2 movies yesterday back to back, the exact same theme of the innocent female going where the could or shouldn't go, and then they die, and then the good men have to become violent and destroy the bad men. It was the exact theme for 2 different things, completely. One was the new Rambo movie, and then the other one's Dark Crystal, the Netflix.
Mm-hmm. Is that like the only thing we knew? We can do violence as long as it's justified? Is that the whole thing? We're sort of like absolving our own guilt?
My point of branding it up is that
I'm just wondering.
Probably going back to the Venus and Mars event, and I'm sure I'd love to hear Mike Armstrong talk about it. But it was the thing that stuck out to me was it was the exact same trope, literally back to back in my day.
I'll just make a note on the repetition of the cycles. It's just this idea that there's somehow a way to have eternal peace just doesn't seem really congruous with the fact that life is arcing, so you're born, you grow, you become a certain age, and then at a certain peak of that wave, you start to decline and age and wear away. Likely the same thing with politics, civilization, languages, war, right?
Well, the question was, Cronus is called the god of death and time because before him there were no death. I mean, that's a big statement to make.
Is that possible even though, physically?
Electrically speaking?
Yeah.
What keeps you alive? We
Medically,
don't really know.
Counter
Medically,
space.
No, I'm just saying we don't really know.
Okay.
But there's good stories.
I think that it's probably a euphemism.
I think there is too, obviously. I think that chances of you actually living 1,000 years in a wilderness without being eaten by something is kind of high. So they're probably referring to death by just getting old and dying, and that might be something that's new. Like getting infirm and dying is not something that happened, because most of the time before that actually occurred, if it was a really quote unquote golden age, something would kill you before, or you'd fall off something before you actually died of old age. This is just not my idea. Obviously, I'm sure. Like I said, there's people who've talked about this before, but it just happens to be written down. It's an interesting take on that.
Well, many cultures, the wrinkling of your skin and stuff like that was supposed to have come after the Sodom and Gomorrah event 4,000 years ago. And even during that time, you would announce that you were going to die, so you kind of knew your spiritual lessons were over, or you gave up hope or something. But you would announce that you were going to die, and then everybody come around you when you give your last prophecies or whatever, and then you would. It was a decision that you made, and the themes that you're all talking about is that the novelists, they have like 39 or so themes that they've run back and seen how many themes there are possible in the if to do a novel or something, and almost everybody's doing this unconsciously. They're doing the same story, the Bruce Willis kind of thing, not wanting to be the hero, but being forced to because you're
the reluctant hero.
Yeah, they're all doing the exact same theme, which comes back to The Sacred Executioner, which I read, and it is definitely a good book. It opened my eyes to the fact that even in modern society, people will do these crazy things.
Actually, it's still written in, I can remember, I mean, I know this is going to sound crazy just mentioning it, but if you ever watched Robotech, and I know that's a Japanese anime type of thing, but one of the things in it is that very big trope where the general or the commander goes, "I thought war would be over in our lifetimes, but here we go again." Like, I have to do it, type of thing.
Yeah, it's survival.
Well, yeah, but it always makes it, the reluctancy, I don't know if that's is that a mental justification? Is that I don't know.
Well, I would submit that we do have a specific time when war started, and it does appear that it was the end of Saturn's reign, beginning of Jupiter's reign, that mankind realized that you could have mass war and it was okay to take other people's stuff. And we don't have any evidence of pillage economy before that. We have evidence of agriculture before that, not pillage economy. So it's quite likely that there is some cultural memory within us, and certainly conscience would say that.
Wouldn't that be the first big division? Like, I mean, if we're talking about it in mentally speaking, and Mike Armstrong can tell us exactly how wrong we are in just a second, but if if you had all this wonderful symbolism up in the sky, like there's depicted on the screen now, the Great Conjunction, or anything of that sort, and we were involved or wrapped up in it, I could picture. I'll go there. I can picture that we actually have this wonderful thing up there, and then it gets divided, starts getting wobbly. We're trying to interpret it. This brings about language and stuff like that. But when it broke, and of course that would be horrifying, Clash of the Titans stuff. Everything after that, of course, being scarred from that event alone, but everything after that would be constant conflict with Who do you worship? Who are you following? You know,
yeah,
and this
also inspiration.
Of course. Oh yes, certainly. Especially in places where they could see it but not get killed by it.
All of the world's weapons of the gods are all current, well, up until the 20th century, weapons that have been used. The spear, the sword, the trident, and the bow and arrow are all weapons of the gods worldwide. So you end up with very clear, not just justification, but inspiration.
Oh yes, in fact, we took these holy items and turned them into weapons.
The horrors of the Warring States period kind of is overlapping the reign of Ares. Probably not an accident. In Rome, they had that festival where they would kill 9 of the 10 bulls, and that's in China, it was 9 of 10 gods or sons were shot down by Hoyi. So the worship of Hercules or Gilgamesh, whoever you want, it would have incited people to certain behaviors, but I don't think that would change what's inside of our conscience and what's right, what's wrong. So your trope of the general regretting that peace isn't attained in the lifetime, and the constant feeling like we're failing, and the feeling like only we could get back to that golden age, I think is going to be stuck with us for some time, because I think it is cultural memory. But I also think there's conscience. I think there's something programmed in our conscience.
Well, it's genetic memory, I think.
Well, hold on,
truly,
Rick.
I do.
Hold on, everyone. I totally understand where you're coming from. I think though that I think we might lack the understanding of how much non-consciousness makes us feel. Like, our ability to have feelings is one thing, but the ability to have grief over something. I mean, these people were doing things that until Socrates and Plato, they didn't even know this stuff was bad. Like, I mean, they didn't know they were sinning. It was only until you didn't know sin until you became conscious, so to speak. Is that correct, Mike? Is that would be your interpretation? I just see you constantly trying to talk, and I don't know if we're interrupting you, because I want to hear from your point of view, because clearly this is your specialty.
Well, okay. I hardly know where to begin.
How wrong we are.
Yeah. Except to portray the idea of the bicameral brain mind. And back during the Golden Age, evidently both consciousnesses based on both minds. One consciousness is dedicated to personal self-consciousness, and the other brain mind is evidently dedicated to a kind of network or public consciousness. And the self-conscious mind was in control of ordering that or organizing that or tuning into it or directing it. And that seems to me to be an ideal setup. And so there was telepathic communication. Nobody felt like we do today. We're all isolated today. Man is an island, okay? And we've had to substitute for a kind of constant interconnectivity. We've had to do substitutes for that. And of course,
some of them more successful than others.
I didn't quite catch the drift.
Oh, I just meant religion being one, drugs being another, for example. I just, was thinking hallucinogenics in some cases, or whatever substitutes were involved.
Well, I see drugs as an escape mechanism, and of course, almost everybody is into escape mechanisms of some kind or another. My favorite escape mechanism down through the years has been sleep, because it's non-dangerous and it doesn't violate any laws or whatever. It's
this was not an advocation. I just happen to know of the cases where shamans would use hallucinogenics and other things to try to commune and bring back that feeling. I assume that's what they're doing. And
well, sure, because what really happens And there are several ways to blank out self-consciousness, which
Mhm.
allows the second brain mind to take over. And so consequently, then we get visions and dreams and images and experiences. When we go to sleep, the second brain mind takes over and organizes or portrays dreams to us generally.
Mhm.
Most of which we're told we don't even remember when we wake up. But some people, like Mozart, would wake up with a whole symphony that Mozart didn't compose. He woke up with it, and he had to rush to the writing table and write it all down before it got away from him. Well, Mozart was asleep. Who's doing that? Who's composing such a fabulous symphony or piece of music?
I love this. I've had this argument myself,
Yeah.
talking about people, so I know exactly what you mean.
I love
Yeah.
dreams.
So in my mind, it's the second brain mind consciousness.
Yes.
It's
yes.
always there. It's always working. It goes insane, if you will, because it doesn't have a venue for expression. It demands that a third of our time we need to sleep. There's no physiological justification for sleeping. The enigma or the mystery surrounding sleep has never been resolved. Okay, it's certainly indefensible as an evolutionary development. That
Fall
would
down and make
benefit.
yourself vulnerable for 8 hours.
Right.
Good times. Yeah.
Fall down a third of the time and make yourself totally vulnerable. That's not a good evolutionary strategy. On the other hand, for a creationist, it doesn't make any sense that God, or the creator, I should be more technically correct, the creator would create beings that absolutely have to become unconscious a third of the time. Who would do that?
And the idea is, of course. Oh, go ahead, Ramon.
To be plain, you don't have to be. The problem is there are stages for achieving the sleeping gong in order to avoid that. When you're a child, of course, that's completely normal. And then in our modern age, it's really difficult with all the things we consume, and I don't mean that only eating. I mean visual, auditory consumption, and the number of things that we become wrapped up in. Usually, we're just simply too tired to actually engage in the full astral experience.
That's an excellent point. I have sleep apnea, and it was undiagnosed for many years, and it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I was diagnosed. And so sleep deprivation was part of my daily experience, which had the effect of allowing me to fall into a dream state at any moment during the day. My employers were not particularly happy with this feature. They saw it as a bug.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I got an apparatus that allows me to sleep deeply, and I've had a different relationship with sleep ever since then, Michael. And I wonder. I also have this inverted intuition, which I draw from daily, and I wonder if those things are connected, and our relationship with sleep can be altered, or is for some inane the capacity to draw from the subconscious and to have. There have been moments when I've been speaking and then I finish what I have to say, and I think, who the fuck just said that? People, I feel sometimes that there is a voice that speaks through me, and I wonder if it has to do with this sort of subconscious.
I think it very much it does. I think it very much does. In my opinion, I'm not going to speak for Michael, of course, but there is a clearly, in fact, anyone who's listening, we talked about this before, but you can really just look at about as simple as just thinking about Star Wars and the Force. Like, there's
Can I ask Mike? Oh, sorry, I didn't know you. I thought you were done.
Oh, I'm just going to quickly finish up. But basically, there's this idea of becoming balanced and listening to your inner self, and sort of recognizing and trying to stay away from the things, like basically learning not to have feed these desires. And then, of course, there's the whole idea of just feed them and get it over with and move on. And that's sort of like the dark side of the Force type of idea. But it's not wrong that those feelings are there. And if you don't acknowledge them or work them out, or if you're in a structure which is confined mentally, where you cannot have a wide open idea, for example, there are only so many gods because I can see them in the sky type of feeling, that's very restricting for your mental landscape. And so it was easier for some of these people to speak in tongues, speak through people, speak prophecy, basically go full on schizophrenic, which, by the way, most of them don't sleep. So,
can I ask Michael Armstrong 2 questions for one of my MVPs?
Yeah, go.
He wants to know, he's dying to know, how long do you think the polar configuration lasted, number 1, and number 2, if we've only had 12,000 years, I pretty much know the answer to this one, but he wants to know, if we've only had 12,000 years since the last of it, why do we know about the equinoxes, precession of the equinox?
Okay. What was the first part of your question again?
How long did the polar configuration last?
Okay. The way some of us have put the whole thing together, and this includes Don Scott and Wal Thornhill, is that initially the Earth was a satellite of what is now the planet Saturn, but which back then was an independent star outside of the solar system, a star that was a red giant or a brown dwarf, whatever, some version of that, and that the Earth and Mars and many other bodies, moons, were inside the glow event horizon of Saturn, so that the energy that was received by the Earth was uniform in all directions. Okay, and there were possibly only one object that we could see in the sky, and that was Saturn itself, our central star. And that was the Edenic environment. The climate didn't vary, and the environment was beneficial or benign, if not benevolent. And then the Saturnian system drifted into the influence of the solar system and broke up when it encountered the heliopause. Okay, and then the planets of the Saturnian system began to spiral in. They lined up and began to spiral in underneath the plane of the ecliptic, so to speak, or the solar equatorial plane. And they spiraled in for thousands of years. How many? I don't know, a few thousand. 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. It doesn't matter that much. And this was the end phase of the Golden Age. It was the age of the alignment, when all of the historical and mythological, all the mythologies were developed. And then it spiraled in at a radius probably comparable to that of Jupiter, which was already in the solar system. And when it came near Jupiter, then that interaction broke up the polar alignment, and Jupiter temporarily took over as the major influence for the denizens of the Earth. And, it's unclear to me exactly what happened during the Jovian age, but eventually that all broke up, and all the planets, because of electrical discharge interchanges, balanced out the orbital energies and became circularized. And so there were, after the breakup of the polar configuration.
Well, how long did that last?
How long did what last?
The configuration.
Well, like I say, it 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years. Well, we were spiraling in toward the solar equatorial plane.
I see.
As a comet, as Saturn being a comet.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, as a comet. I mean, yeah, it was discharging, and Venus, of course, was discharging back to Saturn and bobbing up and down on the polar alignment and bobbing sideways. It wasn't all just nice straight system.
Right.
And sometimes Mars was bobbing up and down, and so Mars would approach Venus, and there would be a discharge and exchange of material, and then it would go the other way, and the Earth and Mars would come close, and Mars would dump material, or there would be a material exchange between the Earth and Mars.
The oscillation.
Yeah, the oscillation. And eventually, though, this polar alignment broke up because of interaction with Jupiter in our understanding. And then eventually all the various pieces went flying into non-aligned orbits that were more or less trying to settle into the equatorial plane. And so all the planets are more or less in a plane, but not totally. And then of course you have Uranus or Neptune is way out of bounds in terms of being in the plane. But then these orbits were still highly elliptical, and so periodically the orbits of the Earth, Mars, and Venus came close, and so there were these flyby catastrophes. Firstly, primarily delivered by Venus, where we got all of this material rained down on us, fire and brimstone and naphtha, hydrocarbons, whatever. And then there were some flybys by Mars later. So there were actually two eras where there were Martian-delivered catastrophes to the Earth. One, the first era was when Mars was in the alignment with Earth and bobbed up and down, and so periodically came close to the Earth, and that was a catastrophic interaction. And then later, when Mars flew by in the elliptical orbit, more or less in a plane. So it's all pretty complicated. It's almost impossible to sort it all out, but I have to accept it as really happening.
Sorry.
It happened.
How long?
I want to interject
I'm sorry. I just want
my research.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I want people to understand that what he just said, by and large, everything that I found independently goes exactly with what he's saying. So I know that people are going to be wondering, this is just another version. That sequence that he just described is almost exactly what I found through my research before joining the Electric View.
I'm trying to get the biggest question out there, and that's this. This is what he wants to know, and this is a stumbling block for people that needs to be known.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that the ancients figured out the precession of the equinox if the Earth could not see the other stars? So how long do you think the Earth has been going around the sun like it is today?
There's actually some debates on like that exact thing of the sun being birthed. Like, for example, there's other people who've put forth evidence that we were dropped off here and then we were grabbed by Saturn again. So, and I've also heard different variations of the tale. And I mean, figuring out exactly which one is 100% correct is probably a challenge because it's a matter of putting faith in something. One of the things that you do about the precession of the equinox is totally correct to have a question. If it is, we would not always be encompassed under the glow of Saturn once the coma retracted at certain points, or we might actually have seen stars from a certain point of view, depending on your location on the planet. We could, because the aurora would be strong, and there would be some effect around the equator, but usually they would pinch into streamers and go over the planet. We see those today, actually. We have those plasma tubes going over the equator. So it's
another equally possible situation is that some of the attendants to the gods or the brighter stars that we now recognize as the most important stars like Arcturus, or the Orion's belt, that they were always considered little angels or attendees to the gods, and that they may have been the method by which they were able to calculate. It would have been a little bit easier because there would have been less distraction. They wouldn't have gotten lost as to which star they were looking at. That's also a possibility.
Well, I just pondered one major thing not that long ago by discovering someone's work. Her name's Tess Clark, and she makes the point, and I can't say she's wrong or right, but she makes the point that if Saturn is the god of harvest, that would entail work. And in the myths, Saturn castrated his father, Uranus. Wouldn't that make Uranus the god of the golden age? Because man didn't have to work. You see, we didn't have weights and measures and time and all that. Well, I mean, it's just that she makes that argument, and it's a pretty good one.
Well, remember that the planet Uranus is modernly named, but it's probably not correctly identified.
Well, Janos was the god of the golden age, right?
That's correct. There's so much confusion. Almost all of the names that we bandy around were originally names or titles of Saturn. Okay. Jupiter stole the titles and identity of Saturn because it replaced Saturn as the dominant fixture and force in the sky. Okay. And some of these names are not names, they're titles. And so, when, for instance, in our society, when a presidential term is over and a man leaves office and a new one takes his place, he's called by the same title as the previous man was, president, right?
So, or king or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. So there's so much confusion.
Yeah.
We cannot assign these names that relatively modern man has assigned to the planets now. We can't extend those back into the golden age or the age of the alignment or whatever. That just isn't valid.
Yeah, I completely agree that if you look at the four siblings of the Greek gods, most likely the four gas giants, and in which case just looking at it, Neptune being Poseidon, possibly, then Uranus would probably be Hades. But Hades is a place as well as a title. So, but there's all these stories of gods being cast out, and there are a number of retrograde moons, and it's all perspective. I mean, the moon today, obviously, it's only an eighth the size of the Earth, and yet it looms as large as the sun. So anything that would have been closer, it could have been much larger in their pantheon as compared to to what's important to us now. But we've almost certainly, if it wasn't one of the five that came down to us and is in our week, in the names of our week, we probably have them named incorrectly.
Yeah, the most prominent example of what we're talking about here is our sun today, which we call Sol or Helios, right?
Right.
Well, those were names and titles for Saturn long before they were applied to our current sun.
I see. So you're saying that Janus is the god of the Golden Age, and Janus is where we get January from, the first month of the year. And it is known in myth that Saturn castrated his father, Uranus. Now, there has to be a history there.
Well, it's also Janus is a two-faced god.
Saturn's father, there's got to be a history.
Well, we always say two-faced god as a god having two faces, but maybe he occupied two places, and that's why he has two faces. Things like that.
I see.
I'm literally spitballing on that one.
I know.
Okay.
I know. Hey, that's all we can do. We don't have a time machine.
Oh.
That's totally what we do here.
Yeah, I love it.
Time machine.
Awesome. The more that's
interject, guys,
the better.
If I can for a second.
We'll allow you to.
Hey, what's up, fellas? And Greg J, I love your videos.
Hey, Sean.
This is Sean here, man. Yeah.
That's Sean.
It's ritual for me. Oh, well, let me put a Greg J video on before I go to bed, and they will still be playing in the morning when I wake up. So this is what I do.
I love it.
When you really look at antiquity, I look at the frequency of what they were talking about right in the indexes, and the constellations and precession is still something very, very small. Could they see precession at times? I'm sure they could, but it's not the obsession at all. Especially with the Egyptian text, if you will, since everything is fragmented, they left more of the fragments, if you will. It comes right from the gate, from the Bronze Age, Horus and Hathor. I mean, it comes right away. On the Narmer palette, Horus is flying above Narmer's head. They go right to Horus and Hathor right away. Mention Atum, but then work backwards. Then eventually when the Greeks come in, now they're finally talking about Zeus. Like way later. I mean, way later. It's like that was the thing, man. The Mars-Venus connection, which, in Velikovsky's work, obviously was put forth the way it was put forth. Jupiter came into play. Saturn wasn't into as much play because it wasn't in play in the stories themselves. I even have some contentions now that me and Michael have talked about it. From a linguist point of view, they'll try to associate Marduk with Jupiter. And that's inconsistent even from a linguistic stance. It can't be Jupiter because Jupiter and Mars in any other stories don't seem to have really an interaction that way. It's Venus and Mars. Then Marduk is a warrior god. I mean, he fights against Tiamat, the sea serpent, if you will. And it seems that since Nibiru is Marduk's star and is associated with Jupiter, some linguists have just said, okay, well, Marduk is Jupiter, but wait a minute. The warrior god is Mars and is always in some kind of drama. But then how is Marduk following that same pattern of the warrior, now Jupiter? See what happens? I mean, when you really take a closer look, Saturn wasn't talked about that much, and Jupiter surely wasn't in Egypt. I mean, I read it and I'm like, Amen was the hidden god. He was hidden. He didn't play a major role. And then by the time the Greeks, start worshiping Zeus, Amen, and we get to that late period, now it starts to become something that's talked about. So it's just the minds of the people at the time were super stuck on the warrior god and the mother goddess, like big time, like
let me
super
ask you
big
this,
time.
John. Let me ask you a question, Sean. Do you think that the combativeness between Saturn and Jupiter, I'm just going to use the planet names, is supposedly to reflect or could have caused the tendency of rebellion in humans about age 16, 17 until they're in their 20s, and then the part where the son becomes the father tends to reflect the experience of men after age 25, slowly becoming more and appreciating their father. Do you think that we have placed that under God, or that was an event that happened and then we put that in?
Yeah, I kind of dropped out.
I hear you,
for a
Sean.
second.
No,
Yeah, I dropped out
you,
for
Sean.
a second. My phone went boop, boop, boop. It very well could be related. From what I'm reading, you know, it seems as though the Saturn golden era was right. Is that obsession that even at the time was talked about, but the main obsession still was the warrior god. So then if Jupiter then displaced Saturn, you know, that still was like right outside of the Bronze Age. It seems the Bronze Age people's mind. It was right outside of it. Because the golden era is over. We're in, we'll say, the Jovian era. And that seems like it was talked about with the new king later still. And it could have psychological effects on everything. It should. I mean, everything we always talk about. And there's a truck coming by. Sorry about that, fellas. Everything we talk about in this group in terms of how we behave, how our lives, on a government scale, kings and queens are patterned after this era. Well, the king and queen was Mars and Venus. And then that story again.
Okay, no, I mean, so much more than that. But yes, I mean, even every single aspect of their clothing, everything they wore, and everything they did was based on this.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned a couple weeks, like a week ago, like, you know, how would people that did not ever see a leopard wear leopard skins, or even have the idea of wearing a leopard skin? People in Europe didn't see a leopard.
And the royal color purple.
But it does.
Go ahead, Greg.
I think it does,
Sorry,
Ramon.
what were you saying?
It does. It seems.
Just a second, Sean. What was that, Greg?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry. I just was trying to get a side note to whoever's controlling the video.
I am.
To play the video, Ancient Planet Gods, Saturn with E.F. Cochran. That's a good video. It's got my dancers.
I think I did earlier, but I'll do it again.
Oh, you did? I did. I missed it.
That's quite all right. Don't worry about it. I'm
if you played it already, don't worry about it. Okay, I'm sorry.
4-star F. Cochran, was that the one?
Yeah, Ancient Planet Gods, Saturn Theory.
Oh, I didn't play that one. Okay, good. Now I do. Yeah. There we go. Perfect.
Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, this is about you. Don't worry about Sean. He'll be okay.
I'll be fine.
I hate interrupting, but I have to blurt it out or I forget.
No, you feel fine. You're the guy here. I mean, in fact, go finish up, Sean. Though, go ahead, finish up.
Yeah, I mean, and it just seems like it does play into the psychology of what Ramon just said. I mean, men don't really mature until they're 40. And that's really across the board. A lot of us can say that we really don't mature till we're 40. Then when we go backwards into our teen to, early 20s into our late 20s, it's a journey that somehow seems to be related back to the older period of time. And then, oh man, we talked about this the other day. I mean, another person, us as parents, we really get it wrong. I mean, it's like a hit or miss. I was talking to my son, and he's 20, and he was telling me some things that he's going to do different because he has a daughter now. And I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And we're still kind of guessing at this thing. And, it does. It seems like a lot of this still plays into our psychology to this day. It just does, man. Like,
speaking of procession, Greg,
what I'm getting at is this the language thing may have explained it, but also this part may explain how Jupiter and Mars, their behaviors get interrelated, and how one was started as the thunder god, and then the other one became the thunder god, and one was tricky, but then the next one was even more tricky or adventuresome, I would say. Venus ended up being the trickster, whereas Mars ended up being the adventurer. But it may play into our psychology and how we actually interpreted the motions in the sky as well.
Well, and you know, we're back to the bicameral brain, and we're relying on ancient people's testimonies as to what they saw or remembering, you know, over time of what they were told was going on in the skies. And that, you know, when Talbot talks about regional myths start to contradict themselves, it becomes, like, you know, was said earlier, it becomes really difficult. I even came up with an idea, and me and Michael had talked about this, Armstrong, that it looks like Set and Horus could be alter egos of one another, because
well, the night version of the same god.
Yeah, like, because it shows Horus and Set having, you know, both their heads are on the same body a lot of times in Egyptian art, or they're
we were just talking about that
on,
Janus having two faces.
They're pulling on a looks like a bow on a pole, and a lot of people would say, oh well, this bow they're pulling on is the contentions of Set and Horus, which came after in the Ramseyan era, after the Duat story. It's only in Heretic, or I believe it's Heretic, the language. It's not even in glyphs, and it's like, what are they talking about? Then, you know, Horus, Uncle Set, then if he's looked at as the uncle, and we're actually even interpreting that, right? He tries to copulate on Horus's buttocks, but he blocked it with a lettuce leaf, and that makes like no sense. But it's like, well, whoa, wait a minute. If they're alter egos of each other, and we're talking about plasmas, and Mars having an atmosphere at the time, coronal hoops, there's things that could make more sense. You know.
Well, yeah, the idea of plasmoids traveling across space from planet to planet, looking like little white pieces, that's almost a given. I think Michael would agree on that one.
Well,
yeah, you know,
it was ET.
It's crazy.
Hey, just a second, Mike, what are you saying? Sorry.
Oh yeah, I'm open to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that image, I think we see that. That's the classic Thunderbolt, to be perfectly honest. But it's a small. They're not. Sure. They were scary, but I mean, in reality, the torture that they probably went through already after the fall of this, the fall of the Golden Age, would probably be like any hint that was going that way would cause Earth to freak out. I think that it shows in our desire for divination, our desire to see the future, our inability to see the future was literally something that, I mean, as an evolutionist, if they were thinking of it that way, was a monumental thing to try to get over, was our inability to see the future. And we've developed this imagination to do that. They didn't have that technology. They were reading tea leaves and throwing bones and sacrificing things. They didn't have any logic to work out here. They were basically, they had no science that, I mean, if they did, they could have been from other places, but most of the people might not have had that. In addition, just to point out your, what you were mentioning, Greg, about your processional problem, I was thinking about that and I just realized, well, if they were also older or lived longer, it would be something you would know if you lived in the same spot all your life. You know, the sun would not rise over a certain tree in 400 years, you know, it would change, you know. That's all. Right. That's an idea.
You're referencing our capacity to predict.
Yes.
Which is definitely an emergent intelligence that we know didn't always, you know, sort of exist. The idea that it's emergent means that it's becoming stronger within us. There's an ancient Sumerian cylinder seal that depicts our 12 planets that I'm looking at here, and it's been sort of a focus of my imagination for some time now. So what I'm looking at basically would have been breaking news. Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about in a chronological experience, this Sumerian cylinder seal saying this is the way things are now, as opposed to this is the way things were in the past, which is an interesting way to look at it.
These people built the pyramids, you know. I mean,
I mean in the Golden Age. I'm talking about the Silver Age. Please understand, Greg. I'm only referring to the people that already had everything wiped off the face of the earth, and then they were sitting there and they were trying to depict, and they had remnants and little pieces, as William Sosa has pointed out, of knowledge, of tricks, but they were never what they were. I think the Golden Age technologies, whatever they were, clearly existed because we have evidence of their construction, the saw wheels, all the amazing pits, and of course Ramon pointed out different chemicals were used for different purposes. It's clear that they had I guess you could say, a unified perhaps mentality, but a functioning society that existed, and then suddenly they started again.
Yeah, but these things that they built, it must have been easy for them. And look at how difficult they are for us, like Puma Punku and all them stone cuts and these great big pillars that weigh 1,000 tons. They're moving them around. Seemed like it was.
I think gravity was different, Greg.
I want to point out.
It had to be.
It had to be. Yeah.
The atmosphere
had to be easy too.
The electrical atmosphere was different as well. I mean,
absolutely.
Okay, I want to just point out that the dating shows that probably actually the Silver Age people were more sophisticated, and the larger the stones, they're not older. The largest stones typically come from just at the height of the end of the Jovian and into the Aryan period. So when I say Aryan, I mean Mars.
By the way, I would like to understand that we should be careful and delineate Golden Age as different from the alignment. Okay.
Oh, okay.
During
I was
Golden
thinking them
Age,
very similar.
Yeah, no. During the Golden Age.
Michael, can you repeat that, please? I didn't catch
that. There are two different major ages which we should not conflate.
Okay.
In terms of what people were doing and not doing, in terms of their technology and their activities and so on. During the Golden Age, nobody contemplated the future because there was no future. The future never changed. The environment never changed.
The environment never changed. Okay.
Yeah. Why would you think about some future that was different? That was outside the realm of experience. And who knows how long people lived during the age. We don't have any reliable records at all, okay? We don't know the level of their empowerment. And we don't know what they did, other than we're pretty certain that they lived in a lush Edenic environment. They didn't worry about growing crops. Food was plentiful when you were hungry. You always knew where the nearest pear tree was. If you wanted a pear, you didn't have to search for a pear. You knew where the nearest ripe pear was, because that knowledge was in the domain of the collective consciousness.
Right.
Imagine never having any uncertainty about anything.
Or vegetable.
I've actually seen this Stargate episode. It's like in season 5, and everyone has this little thing in their head, but the computer was changing it, and that was nefarious. But still, it's very much like that. Everyone has Wi-Fi back then, like almost.
Right.
I'm not trying to be. That's not a joke. That was me just being straight up. Yeah.
We had something far superior to the technology that we have today,
which allows us to do this,
which has all been designed to replace aspects of empowerment that we lost.
Scalar wave brain.
We came a long way from scratching in dirt and stone to get to this.
We're chasing the
I want to point something out.
But we didn't start off scratching in dirt and stone.
Correct.
We started off in what? Heaven is a word you can lay on it, or I use the term Edenic environment. And only when this age, the Golden Age, came to an end and the age of the alignment began, that's when all the trouble started. That's when you started having to worry about what the future would bring. That's when Saturn went nova and blossomed onto the Earth all but lethal radiation. That's when there were times when there was no way you could survive being out in the open. You had to have shelter. And anyway,
I want to support exactly what he's saying, especially the part where he was talking about people didn't have to grow things. When we look at agriculture, of course, up until recently, they thought that Sumer was where agriculture got its start. But at the same period of time as Sumer, and they were growing out of the ground, over here in the Ohio River Valley, they were forming those mounds, the beginnings of those mound cultures, which we now know, based on their diets, that they were eating from tree crops, which meant that they naturally knew that the best thing for them to do after the changing of the age was to rely on forest crops, and then they took steps to devise dark earths, which locked away carbon much better than the soils we use at this very day in the Midwest and drain and wipe out and create desertification all around the world. So in other words, they instantly knew that they were going to need to rely on trees to produce crops. So how did they know that? Probably because their ancestors relied on trees in the bygone age. And this knowledge was then passed down to the Amazon into what became Amazonia. And to this day, dark earths remain rich in those parts of the Amazon where they have grown them and created trees to grow their crops. And so they weren't doing the kind of farming that we're familiar with.
You're actually outlining the exact sort of like motive that I think we're all sort of touching on, which is people behaved to survive, and the sort of behaviors that we're touching on and alluding to in this conversation are about behaviors of people who are desperate to survive and desperate for their descendants to have knowledge that will allow them to survive time.
Sure.
We live such short periods of time on this earth. Our capacity to pass on information to our descendants is absolutely crucial, which is why the truth is such a vigorous pursuit. And why we do this is because we're trying to suss out the difference between what is our survival nature and what is our nature to thrive.
In a way, Mike, we might actually be very selfish. We, realizing what is causing us pain, we're actually going to it, and like people who are brave enough, we're going to figure out what that pain was and prevent us from passing that along to our own children.
And there you have the archetype of the sacrifice.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to shut up.
And then I've seen, years ago from videos and people posting things that even the fruits, and I'll consider vegetables fruits, that we're eating right now are hybrids, and the originals were different. Well, that would make a whole lot of daggone sense. I forget where I saw that, and it was from a conspiratorial point of view.
It also might be a little bit easier.
People are intentionally going to kill us because they're hybrid vegetables, and oh my goodness, no. The environment changed, and now everything is different than what it once was. And ancient people had to figure it out. Like, okay, what do we do now?
But remember, it would be hard.
That's why God gave us. That's why God gave us the animals.
Well, no, hold on.
Let me interject here.
Yeah.
Let me interject the big picture view. Do I have the floor here?
You do.
Okay. From my perspective, we need to think in radically different terms. That nothing much happened during the Golden Age, but during the age of the alignment and the breakup, then things happened on a global scale. 100 different languages arose around the world from isolated cultures that previously didn't need to have a verbal language. Agriculture rose around the world in people that previously didn't need agriculture. technology arose around the world in a global population that previously didn't need technology.
And if we are correct, it might have actually been quite moist because of the vaporization of the north, of all the, and of course, the snow and rain and so forth, which would be very comfortable for growing more trees,
Well, during the Golden Age, there were no seasons.
Correct. Yeah.
And then after the breakup of the alignment, that's when seasons began. That's when crops and crop rotation technology had to be developed. Okay.
Yes.
But initially,
in fact, we see in the Ohio River Valley. Oh, go ahead.
And initially, when an Edenic environment gets ripped away from a global population, there are not enough resources to go around. The survival principle is take or be taken from. Okay? So war is not just a quirk, it's an absolute necessity for survival. There are the environmental change that took place went from a lovely, delightful world, an Edenic environment, to a harsh, oppressive environment with radical temperature changes, inadequate resources. Well, guess what? Most of the population was suicidal. We would be. I would be.
I want to support this by saying that the phase that he's talking about, that we see the border of when war began and when these mountain cultures popped up, it's 7,000 years ago, and then they accelerated 5,000 years ago into the age of Egypt. But here in America, Poverty Point became this economic center, and there is a mysterious empire that there's just no evidence. It's so long ago, there are like no bodies, nothing remains of how they lived right inside the area where we would expect them to live. The archaeologists say, well, they must have used it for ceremony. But, I mean, you go and it's very obvious.
Well, they're all buried underneath the Canadian Shield.
So my question, I have a question, Michael.
A lot of it's just all.
Well, hold on, guys.
Please, let me
Mike finish.
Let me finish painting a picture here, though, that may direct our questions to be more fruitful or intelligent. This radical change in the environment, in my mind, made many people suicidal, and yet
a la the Wall Street crash or something.
Yeah, right. Only worse. Only
of course, no, but
every element or dimension of one's existence. Okay, and there's a huge problem with suicide. People actually ask other people to kill them, okay? Because if you try to attempt it yourself, you never know whether you're going to bail out at the last instance and just wound yourself or decommission yourself to a worse state than you were in, okay? The golden fleece or the of suicide in the modern era is some method, and this is widely discussed in certain circles, of how best to commit suicide, because you don't want to fail. Okay. Well, okay. So if people are suicide, they asked other people to help them commit suicide. If you have no vision or hope for the future, what are you going to do? You're going to kill your children. Okay,
Michael,
some
Michael?
religious
That's
people
disturbing.
today kill their children because they're unwilling to think of their children being brainwashed by the other parent.
Yes, that's actually, as disturbing as that is, very oddly tribal.
Yeah.
See, these people must have believed they were protecting these children from something worse. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Well,
they were protecting these children from something.
Well, yeah, but obviously it's still messed up, clear. But
a hopeless life of fighting and struggling and in a nasty environment. Why live? Okay, it's possible for everybody to get down to a point of where life is so unfulfilled and so hopeless that they want to commit suicide.
But this would have been also to a degree of, to the nth degree, to a level of, literally, we're talking a decimation, 9/10 the population, whatever, and large waves of water washing over the land, and lightning strikes, everything dead, dying, the smell of decay everywhere. How do you go from that to? You would think it's the end of the world.
And contaminated.
Yes. People are still dying. Like it's not over yet. Yeah.
By poisonous substances. Okay. When you spread lead and cadmium and other toxic metals indiscriminately around the world, that's going to cause major problems.
Yeah, and we know that.
And those people that had the caves in Turkey were like suckers.
And we know that these planets and their discharges brought elemental changes to the surface of the planet,
depending on where they were and how powerful they were and how close they were, would determine exactly how lethal these exchanges were. We're talking about radiation to the nth degree in some cases.
Yes. Lethal radiation.
Just watching it would kill you.
Yeah, lethal levels of electrical field and
synchrotron radiation, gamma rays,
radiation,
when Saturn went nova, no doubt a lot of people lost their vision or whatever. We're just talking about more bad things than any one of us want to think about or pull all together.
Strange to be thinking that the people who are doing petroglyphs might have been telling the people what it looked like because they were blind now.
I think.
Just as an example.
Do you have any, Michael? Do you have any
interesting
timeline of how long Saturn went bright for?
And also on the tail end of that question, do you believe that this is something that has happened once in our past, Michael, or do you believe this is something that happens on a cyclic level?
I don't see it that particular aspect as cyclical, but Saturn certainly went nova when the Saturnian system encountered the heliopause. Now, there were other, after that, there were other events that caused the climate on the Earth to vary widely. So we went through a series of ice ages. And I no longer to bother to sort it all out because I've learned what I need to know from the general picture of it all. I don't need to sort out all the details. I'm 100%.
I think that's wisdom for all of us who are seekers to understand that there's a limit to what we need to know.
No, we can know, but let's we have to be a little bit humble. Yeah, let's be honest.
Yeah.
These people are trying to yell from the past for 20,000 years to try to get this to our ear. And we should be happy we know anything about this.
Yeah. Well,
when you think about it.
I want to know the truth. I want to know what happened and
what I meant was if there's a difference of a minor detail. For example, at the end of the day, we all agree that there was electricity was a part of this event, and whether or not Saturn showed up here, here, and here, it was clear that Saturn was the god that ruled over the skies and was in the polar configuration. I don't think we can deny that at this point, but that's where a lot of symbolism comes from. So when did these things happen? Like, one could say, well, no, but Michael, flowering plants, orchids, they're very old. What do you make of that? They're seasonal. What's going on here? But are they? Do we know now? Are we sure those dates are correct? So suddenly that's up in the air, you know?
The worst thing that a man can do, a human being can do, is to know things that aren't so. It is not to be ignorant. We're all ignorant. I'm grossly, profoundly ignorant. But what I have fought against in my life is knowing things that aren't so.
It is not ignorance you should fear, it is certainty.
Hey, y'all, can I jump in here
Guys,
for a
I
sec?
hate to be a party pooper, but I'm going to have to go soon. Go ahead.
Well, if you don't mind, before anyone... Okay, guys.
Let me just...
Okay, hold on. Chris, go ahead, and then Sean, because we want to talk about like a few questions for Greg before he takes off. So, I'm sorry, Greg, I wanted to talk more, but Michael is just such a wonderful voice and a storyteller.
Oh, I completely understand. It's okay.
Okay. Well, I still want to get that. Chris, do you have a...
Yeah, I've just been listening to all of it. I want to throw in one comment and one question. One is... There's this whole idea of the golden age, returning to the golden age. Things were better, things sucked, problems, etc. Right? But I also asked this question in the chat room just because I always kind of want to be the devil's advocate there, which is, are we doing that badly? You know, like, how many people are on Earth right now? If let's say it's 8 billion, let's say it's 2 billion, whatever number you believe in, to me, and this might just be a total guess, is that there are the most people ever on Earth since we started. And I feel like that's a sign of success. Things like losing telepathy in exchange for a global internet where we can all communicate in maybe more effective ways than telepathy. Anyway, that's me repeating myself. All right, so anyway, I thought
we'll talk about that more on the show.
Do you guys think the most, I'm just finishing the last question, is
sure.
Do you guys think that we've had the most people ever on Earth today, or did we have more people in a different epoch? Thanks.
I think that's true. During the Golden Age, evidently, women had the ability to choose whether they were going to get pregnant or not. Okay, that potential has been observed scientifically in some cultures and in some circumstances. Okay, so there weren't any accidental pregnancies during the Golden Age. And
that's kind of messed up.
A woman's menstruation period now is correlated with the period of the moon, the lunar cycle. Well, what in the hell is that all about? Okay, why is that?
I honestly do not know. I do know that
we need to repopulate the Earth.
Well, no, we actually have a direct link in our own, like our circadian rhythms that are, I mean, if it is just simply pulses or anything like that, rhythms that we're following, as people have known that for some reason we used to get up in the middle of the night all the time when we were older. Like older people used to do it. My grandparents did it, for example, and just would get up at 1 or so in the morning and have tea and eat a couple biscuits, play a game of cards, and go back to bed. And that happened.
That's very common.
That's because we're synced to Mars, not Earth.
Well, I'm not even sure why that is, but there's definitely. I mean, those weird things are not something we have anymore. We artificially have made things. That's all. And Sean, you had a question.
Yeah, for Greg J. He made a video, and he showed Gunnar Heisen slam dunking a basketball, and the CE or AD chronology revision seems extremely solid. Are you familiar with him and others' BCE chronology revisions at all? Have you went down that road?
Not as much as I would like to. I need to go down that road more, to be honest with you. I had spent more attention on the AD.
Okay.
And
he doesn't. it's weird. He doesn't. Professor Heisen, I mean, really nailed the CE stuff, and he has some, information about BC as Lynn Rose does, and Emmett Sweeney and Velikovsky, and there's a big 800-pound or 900-pound elephant in the room where, guys like Heisen are saying, stratigraphy will be the final arbiter in chronology, not the history and the historical documents we have themselves. And even Sir Isaac Newton and these guys were talking about this same stuff about Egypt when they were alive. Like, yeah, we don't think that's that way. It's probably this way. I just didn't know if you looked down. I didn't know if you looked down that and went down that rabbit hole. Because I like that video. That was a good video. Like you showed him slam dunking, and I'm like,
yeah, that's my history.
Good video. Yeah. That's a really good video.
Thank you.
I just didn't know if you went down the Charles Jananthal books in that rabbit hole where CE seems to be tackled, but then BC doesn't. But BC deserves some attention. I didn't know if you had, went down that road yet, or just kind of wanted to bring that up to you and ask
Let me just say, in the very beginning of his presentation, Gunnar Heinzen explains why he's going into AD, because his book that he wrote only went up to the 1st century AD, and he stopped. And he said that was a big mistake. He said that he found 700 years missing in the AD millennium and 300 years missing in the BC, which made it, or I think it was 600 years. So it made it, he thinks our history is off by 1,300 years. And I believe that Velikovsky was saying something between 300 or 600. Mike might know. I know it's something like that.
Well, I've accepted, even though I kept an open mind for a long time, because I'm try to be aware of my own ignorance and inability to even canvass all the possibilities.
Keep them all in your head, yep.
Yeah, but Heinsohn has convinced me that his AD chronological revision is correct.
I think so too.
And that somehow about 730 years, give or take, 700 to 730 or thereabouts, got padded into the 1st millennium.
Yes.
AD. Okay. So this isn't the year 1919. It's the year
2019
or something like that. Okay.
I understand. You say it's 730 years off.
Yeah, that's how wrong mainstream thinking and the consensus can be.
Okay? Oh, jeez, yes.
But the power, and if I'm not mistaken, the argument would be by doing this during the revisionist era and padding the numbers, it turned the church into something that was eternal. Mentally eternal. Like, I mean, it's been running for 1,000 years.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, the influence of
that's all I meant.
Religious predictions or prophecies, like in Revelation or whatever, has influenced all of this. Kings thought that it was very beneficial to be born on the 0 year of a new century or whatever, and so on. So it's really all so confused and nebulous. And Heinsohn has said, look, let's understand that there is a layer that has been laid down that covers most of Europe of sand and gravel and muck, 15 up to 15 meters thick, that was laid down at one time, and that can be used to sync up everything. And that this was caused by a catastrophe, a cometary catastrophe, that really, practically destroyed civilization all over again.
Oh yeah, John Cook talks about that.
Yeah. So, and other people are syncing up the end of, what is it, the Mayan Empire with the same event or whatever. So I don't know, but Heinsohn has convinced me that 730 years approximately has been padded in falsely into the 2,000-year chronology since the birth of the J person. So,
well, really the change does that really put us in the completely wrong? Yeah, I know. Does that put us really in the completely wrong astrological age, or what's going on there?
Oh, sure. There's nothing concrete about astrology and all of that stuff. There may be an underlying reality that.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. I only meant, like, for example, the argument that the age of Taurus to the age of Aries to the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. Like, in that sense, we're not even close to the age of Aquarius then. Is that why there maybe is?
Yeah, I don't think there's any meaning to that whole way of thinking, other than that there have been ages caused by the solar system realities in the past, and but I think in terms of three major ages: the Golden Age, and then the age of the alignment, and then the post-alignment age.
And of course, the transfer from the alignment,
circular disasters during the polar configuration, and then again once we disconnected from Saturn and Jupiter, and all of them went out.
Well, that would have been the worst, probably, in my opinion. I can't think of anything worse than no longer being attached to Saturn. That everything after that would have been absolutely devastating, because we would have left the confines for the first time in some chronology retellings of Saturn's influence, and gravity would change instantly, or if that's an effect, many other properties of matter might change instantly, and whatever technology existed prior to then is dead. I mean, it would just be like as if we were trying to use computers underwater. They wouldn't work just as effectively.
Well, yeah, Saturn was powering the Earth, and also.
Well, no, it doesn't matter about power. It's simply a matter of conditions of environment. But anyway,
we had to start all over, and we went through the various ages of the Stone Age.
Oh, we would have got flooded out of existence practically too.
Blah blah blah. but those ages weren't multi-thousand years old. They were only a few hundred years old, or in duration, or whatever. One of the truly great scholars and a friend of mine was Eduardo Cardona, and he's produced 5 large tomes talking about all of this and putting it in some kind of sequence. But Eduardo would never commit himself to dating, but he would always and ever say it all happened within the last. Anybody know what he thought or what I think?
What?
It all happened within the last 10,000 years.
That's what the numbers I have seen in many of the retellings. Yeah, I mean, it would have to be fairly fresh. We wrote it down.
So
that's also the time periods I put in my papers. So
12,900 years ago.
So that's right.
And me being the most radical of radicals, I cut that in half. I'm convinced from the other arguments that existed in the 1800s with Flinders Petrie, the greatest archaeologist that ever lived, and he ignored direct evidence that was like, wait a minute, dude, slow your roll, man, slow down. Slow down, because you can chop, at least from what I see, 50% off of the Egyptian dynasties, which is you're not going to start in 3100 BC. You can start it in 1500, and it make way more sense as per all the Near East excavations. Just like you can do it in Europe. It's like you don't have a newer culture on the bottom and the older culture on the top. And now we talk about catastrophes,
well,
things
yeah,
of that nature.
Things
no
don't
problem.
happen that way.
But you don't. You can't.
Sean, you crazy.
We can't explain. We can't explain away succession of how things naturally occur. You start with copper, then we develop bronze, which has tin in it, then iron. Not tin, then copper, then iron. Because it's really strange, again, that the Egyptians in the 3rd millennium BC fought against the old Akkadians, who had the scimitar sickle sword, which was bronze. Now, they allegedly drove them out. Well, they didn't take any weapons, and they allegedly controlled the Levant, at least until the Ramseyan era, and if not later, with the same copper weapons. But then here come the Hyksos with the tin and iron weapons, the same ones the old Akkadians used in the 3rd millennium. They have them in the 2nd millennium. Then the Assyrians have them also in the 1st millennium, but the Egyptians still have copper as their weapons. That doesn't make no sense. And then
Amen.
The arsenic doesn't come from the Middle East to make chariots and make the weapons. Neither does the white birch for the composite bows and arrows they use. That comes from Europe.
Hey, that's a scimitar.
And the copper came from Sinai, didn't come from Egypt in the first place. So it's like the whole thing is just a mismatch.
Came from Michigan.
Yo, I mean, we talk about that.
Oh, we did.
Like it doesn't make sense. And Heisen hasn't went full throttle with the BC though.
Yeah,
he hasn't went full throttle, and I'm like, go full throttle, man.
I'd like
Bring
to
it
read
up.
this book.
Yeah, because Petrie was just dumbfounded. Like, if you have the Manetho to Josephus to Sextus Julius Africanus, all the way even through, I think it's George the Monk is in 800 AD or whatever, and they just have this chronology established in the Near East, and Egypt is the umbrella that holds the whole thing up. But then you start digging it up, and it's like there's a conflict. Well, no, what happened was in the 6th century BC, the Palestinians couldn't have been paying taxes to Amenhotep and Tutmos, which was 1,000 years before. Those scarab jewelries and that pottery they're forgeries. What did you just say? No, your dating is wrong, dude. Either Amenhotep and Tutmos were in the 6th to 7th century BC, or the Palestinians were in the 15th to 16th century BC. Now you got to take your pick, but it's like, no, those scarabs and those pottery, they weren't paying tax. Those are fakes.
Egyptology alone is a ridiculous idea, but I mean, it should just be called history, but the sacrosanctness of it and the almost, again, scientific religiosity, I don't know what the word is, scientism, whatever, on that particular subject is, I don't know, almost biblical. Literally, I mean, it's like it's strange, isn't
subjects,
it?
But I want to hear a little bit more from Greg before he has to go.
Yeah,
and I have a hard question.
I'm getting hungry.
Greg,
Did you guys eat?
I have a very hard question for you, Greg.
Okay.
I get asked this question by all sorts of people when it comes to the Hidden Kentucky Project. What is your favorite subject to cover?
Man, I would say cosmology. History and cosmology, Ty.
Good
answer. Any particular parts of it specifically?
Yeah, the electric universe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean it. It's just, it doesn't get talked about enough. It really doesn't. You know. It's Walt Thornhill makes so many valid points. It's like every time he makes a valid point, I want to go ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there.
And look at how him and David came together on its own. They backed into each other. They hit each other they were at the same spot when they compared notes. They're like, wow, man. That's the way the truth is. See,
two of those people are in this chat with you who were at that same conference.
Yeah. I know about Michael. Who else?
James Conway is right over there.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Quiet.
I want to assure everybody that it was in 2000 when we had our first Electric Universe or Saturnian Reconstruction conference, a conference that I organized, worked up, was assigned by David to do that. And Wal Thornhill, of course, we had him come over, and he stayed in David Talbot's spare bedroom. At the time, David Talbot rented a 2-bedroom apartment as his office. He didn't live there, but one bedroom was dedicated to storage, and the other bedroom had a bed and whatever was dedicated to guests that would come. So Wall stayed there. So it was late one night, late being about 9:30 for David Talbot, who turned into a pumpkin.
What a party animal.
Yeah, right. Party animal, not. But anyway, Wall and David and I stood around in the entryway because I was leaving, and the three of us made a solemn pact and commitment that we would bring the Saturnian Reconstruction and the Electric Universe paradigm into the public consciousness. And David spearheaded up the Saturnian Reconstruction aspect of it, and Wall spearheaded, of course, the Electric Universe aspect of it. And I played a supportive role, a major role, but a supportive role always, because my concern is not so much with these secondary issues, but with the ultimate issues. What is going on in the universe? What is my destiny? What am I missing? How can I wake up? How can I learn what's really going on or learn more truth? I didn't ask to be born. I got injected into a stupid, crazy, noisy, insane, dangerous, troubled world under a sentence of death.
Yep.
I don't like that, fellas. I don't like that.
Welcome to the party.
Well, then to boot, you're loved and pampered for the first 16 or 17 years until you get out in the world and you get hurt feelings.
Well, yeah.
You know, and then
that hurts a lot. You're not ready for that sometimes.
From their hurt feelings. I heard a saying once. I got to repeat that. I got to say this. I heard it and I never forgot it.
Hey, wait! I thought I was special.
You become what you can't get over.
Yeah,
you become what you can't get over. Yes. That is the story of you.
It was worse in my case because I was a bona fide child prodigy. In the 3rd grade, I could spell better and do math better than the teacher could. And I was always held up and spoiled and featured by my religious community and the local community. And I really got totally spoiled and got set up for a lifetime of come downs. Okay. So I'm just saying that that life has not been a bowl of cherries for me, even though
it is for all of us, really. It has been for me too, Michael.
Yeah, no, I understand the human condition. You guys should watch my presentation from the 2015 conference, the Catastrophic Cultural Carry Forward. It's on YouTube.
Highly recommended.
I will.
Carry forward.
We'll find that.
Neil, can you post those links in the comments after the show's been uploaded, maybe?
Of course.
I'll ask Sean to do that or whatever. But
there are many people walking around right now with a wounded soul. They're hurt.
Oh,
They're hurting.
absolutely. The human condition is atrocious. We live, even though those of us in the civilized, westernized world, especially the United States and Great Britain and some of the countries of Europe, are privileged. Even so, we're only privileged to a very minor degree. Otherwise, we fight, all the other ailments that all humans are subject to. So, and it won't last, fellas. It won't last. The history of the world shows us that the average time between the beginning of a nation and a bloody revolution is 200 years.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We're already over age in the United States.
Yeah. But that's.
No, we had one just 100 and some odd years ago there. So
yeah. The Civil War could be counted as a bloody revolution. But
so you actually were a bit early, and so you have a little bit more time left.
Well,
fingers
sure.
crossed.
And why not early? Because of the American spirit. We got instilled into us by Thomas Jefferson and Madison and whatever, some new and they're not totally new, but some new and very powerful ideas of sovereignty, personal sovereignty, and freedom.
Yes.
Wow.
Good luck with that.
Yeah,
I hope so. But
yeah, I hear you.
The tyranny of the world, that they've got the world by the boo-boo.
But you got to
we're at their mercy.
Let's think about it in a broader context, in the historical aspects that you were saying. Let's think about it for a second. Then in reality, a lot of this whole world conflict, world dominance ideas are harkening back to, we wanted to have the power of the gods. We want, and we want to be able to protect ourselves and to enforce that will, like gods, upon our enemies. Or just to make people be very careful around us. Now, maybe that was an idea, I don't know. But I'm thinking of it in those contexts, how in actuality, even strategic defense could be considered something along the lines of a throwback to an ancient way of culture. They're playing it themselves and they don't realize it.
Well, sure. Look at the wars of Europe, the Battleship Wars. For a couple of 100 years, the nations of Europe competed with each other as to who could build the best navy and the best battleships, And
right.
So when they were ready, then they went out and with pitched naval battles, and one nation sunk the ships of the other nation. And so then they all went back and reconnoitered and recovered. And it wasn't until Great Britain developed the dreadnought, which was the mother of all battleships or whatever. It was named because it had nothing to dread, no fear, no competition. And at some point, the German
I just for this exact second realized that the words "no fear" mean dreadnought. I'm just an idiot.
Yeah. And at some point, the German soldiers just decided to stand down. They refused to go. They en masse disobeyed the orders of their superiors to go out and try to sink the British Navy or whatever.
Yeah, they were basically standing up and saying something along the lines of, "You can play chess at home. You don't need us."
Right. This is all crazy and ridiculous. We're not gonna be involved in it anymore.
And as much as we might hate the some of the weird ideas of Europe, think about what it was like before the European Union. They were just attacking each other all the time.
Yeah. Oh. So wasn't that insanity for 200 years?
A lot longer than two, I think, wasn't it?
And go out
Not just two. You know, I mean, Norman's walking around, and yeah.
All of us have been living with the sword of Damocles hanging over our head with nuclear war for our whole lives.
Well,
do you
sure.
think that it would be a little easier today? We're supposed to be no more Cold War, and we're friends with the Russians, yet the threat of nuclear war is higher than it's been since the 80s. And I mean, they almost nuked the world. The Joint Chiefs of Staff unanimously voted to launch a first strike on the Soviet Union twice, and Kennedy nixed both of them, and they killed him for it. But we didn't have a nuclear war. Just think if he wouldn't have been there. And what that makes me lose all confidence that our leadership cares about human life.
Welcome to the
Greg. Here's the
Can I jump in here for a moment?
I got to say this.
Okay.
We are the people here listening and the people here speaking. We are on the vanguard. We are the cutting edge.
That's true.
We literally can be. We can continue to live in what we are told, or we can ascend to what we are capable of. The fact of the matter is every single person listening to this broadcast and speaking on this broadcast has the capacity to overcome the battles and the trials that we're facing as a speaker. We literally, you are speaking truth, and that truth has an audience, and that audience will continue to grow as we speak truth. And you're committed to that truth. We are committed to that truth. Michael's committed to that truth. Neil's committed to that truth. And the fact of the matter is that is incredibly powerful. And it happens organically. It happens naturally. It happens with warts and scars and all the trappings of humanity. But the fact of the matter is we have to start seeing ourselves as being on the cutting edge of a sword that's changing the paradigm.
Well, I would not agree any differently. I would.
Yeah.
I'd like to say something about that. Since we are standing on the truth and wearing the belt of truth, we are the establishment. The rest of them are playing some kind of game.
Well, so, that's an interesting way of putting it, but yeah, I guess.
Yeah, we're establishing.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah, and to that mark, thanks, Mr. Armstrong, for putting on that 2000 conference. I was there, and it made a big difference. I met Ren's there, and Arp sat next to me. So,
wow,
kudos there for that. But I have to push back a little bit on the chronology thing.
Double wow.
That's
1 degree of separation from Haltner.
Yeah, the six disturbances or disruptions in the archaeological by Schaefer. The first one ends. Let me see. It says it's the Akkadian event. Yeah, there's a traditional date for that. It's 2255 before the Common Era.
Right.
So that's the first disruption that occurs. And then the second, let's go down to the last one, which he puts in between the 2nd century of the Common Era and the 4th. Well, I was looking at it because you were talking about the last time about how the Colosseum got covered. Well,
yes,
the only one that's possible is the last one. And in the year 250, by my synchronicity, and the old one, the traditional one, in that spring equinox, it happened on the 20th, which it had never done before. It was on the 21st. So, which makes the fall equinoxes on the 24th. That would be Augustus' birthday. So, what that means is that
the start of August. Yes.
There was a period of time between 250 and about 289, something like that, where they made a new era from that point, because that's how long it took them to recover. We only have like 2 real significant records between those two periods, and that is the 250 mention of the spring equinox happening on the 20th, and there's a few other things, but there's just almost nothing there. And they put in that new era before the well, in 289, I think it is, and that's the date that they were using. I mean, the era they were using when they changed it into the AD and BC thing, because that's when they recovered. Now, in 376, yeah, was the last time that they actually make huge, gigantic, like the Valens aqueducts. That's the last one that I could check on. That's not a firm date, but that's the last time that they actually made something with millions of bricks. And it's like a 600 or 700 century era after that, where they didn't make anything big. Probably nothing over 4 or 6 stories, because their concrete no longer functioned that way. And that's where I would put and the cosmic CCF, the cosmic chain function event. So I'm just saying that this actually the disruptions in the thing hold up the chronology, and the reason that they're having difficulty with the AD period is because they don't have a lot of construction of these things, and they don't have well, there's just you have a disruption, and it's very difficult. But I think I'm pretty sure now that the period between 250 and 300 is when it took them that long to recover. So that's what I have to say.
Oh, well. That's the kind of thing that people have to go over, I guess, in the future, is try to discern those places where falsification can occur, because being able to throw something out there as dates is what they were taking things as sacrosanct when they were doing the reconstructions, as if these people were absolutely telling the truth. They didn't even check, and that's not gonna help. Anyway, any more questions for Gray before we let the poor man go?
I'm getting hungry.
Yes.
I didn't have more. But the topic was undergoing. I want to remind people of 2 things about Tesla. And one is that he actually called for the creation of automatons, tele-automatons, and ships, and harnessing the power of the atom and putting it into a weapon in order to get mankind to stop the craziness, because he had witnessed the insanity of the First World War. And he did all this just prior to World War II. The other thing about Tesla is he believed in something that no one talks about anymore, which is human energy and human potential. And that, like the general momentum of
intentions
of the human
are so
race.
Powerful.
Yes, but not just our intention, actual actions, what science is doing. And he was speaking a lot about the energy sector, obviously, when he was talking about burning fuel being barbaric, but he meant in general all of the industrialization and the direction of science, and that whatever we do, we should be building human momentum. And he was pretty adamant about that.
Can I jump in here on that?
Yeah, go ahead,
Chris. So earlier I wanted to talk about this whole idea that there's a generational divide between the positivity of the future and not the future, this whole idea of complaining within a vacuum. And I don't mean to kind of just get on everybody's case about like pointing out the evils and the harms and the potential disasters that could occur on Earth, right?
Yay.
But at the same time, I always come back around and like, we're doing this show. There are a lot of smart people together. We actually are more connected than ever. There are more people healthier than ever. There's more equality than ever. I know it's really just, that's kind of an uncommon view in the conspiracy and fringe circuits on YouTube. But in fact, like if we really just take a second to appreciate what we have now, this is how you can move forward. And to
you've got to appreciate what we've managed to do. The idea of science being, I mean, in actuality, this is we're not really challenging science because science is the method in which we are saying that this is what they're doing is incorrect. That's it's advancement is what I meant.
Chris, I think the point that we're making here is that these are hypothetical. I mean, there's the practice of a thing, and then there's the idea of a thing, and they're two separate components. And I don't know. It seems to me it's important to make that distinction.
Well, is it fair to here? I'll give you a good analogy in like a songwriting, for example. The reason I think that people like these videos and doing the live streams, and Greg J likes doing his stuff, and I like doing my streams. There's a big part of the rush of chemicals that you get from producing content, from making a video, finishing a project, right? The idea of like, there's going to be a nuclear strike, why do anything at all? Or there's going to be another catastrophe, why do anything? Is what demoralizes 90% of our population from ever picking up a guitar, writing a song, making a video. So what I'm saying is,
is what you're saying.
Well, it's also elbow nudging in circles of intellects who like, okay, it's good to be nihilistic. We all know that we're not nihilistic, but we're really.
Gotcha,
that kind of
gotcha, yeah.
Okay, we're that's the
pretty close though.
We're letting off steam. However, I'm saying like Greg J makes videos. I make videos. This is what actually is fun. So what I'm saying is like, how do we take this energy of 50 people watching and us and actually get something done is by saying, you're not going to come into a recording studio and say, oh my God, at the end of this, catastrophe. You're going to get out of it and be like #1 record. So it's this idea of getting into the electric universe that's like, hey, #1 record mentality.
I think one of the things that, if we're talking about anything about the electric universe, one of the things that when I say we are the or what he said that we are the establishment, or the idea that we are seeking truth, one of the truths that we should really recognize, if nothing else, is that we are literally, no matter what religion we've fractured into or what beliefs we've had, almost everything of every teaching stems back to the same source. We are literally different facets of the same thing with regards to that. And even in religions, the 3 major religions on the planet are all the same. Yeah. And like this is, I mean, right down to it, same planet, same rules, they're all coming from the same sources. So if nothing else, if nothing else, we take from that the truth of the matter that we are all brothers under the sun, Saturnian sun or whatever, should never be forgotten. We've managed to get together, survive together before, and made the planet great. We can do the same thing again.
Forgive me for
Neil,
being
just one quick point. Could you make Kronos and Greg J moderators?
I'll see what I can do when. Yeah.
There you go.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
Just finishing up, like how to take this show or any space show that I do or any video that people do and actually get people to do things from that is about visualizing a future goal, right? The #1 record mentality, or the I'm going to finish this book mentality. You never walk into a book saying like, oh, I'm definitely going to fail writing this book.
But you do it for yourself, don't you?
I know, of course. I mean, that becomes more nuanced, but I feel ultimately like production of content, or let's say we have 50 people in the chat. What I'm saying is I feel like every time I do a Take Back Space show, I try and just impart a feeling of like, you can do this yourselves. This is specifically and granularly and detailed instructions on how much a scope costs, a camera costs. You can see the moon for yourself. Forget me. I'm not part of it. You're part of it. And I think on a show like this that gets very esoteric and super deep, I sit here for 3 hours and I love it. But I know that there are people out there like who want to know details of like what to do next. What do they do when the show ends?
That's what we talk about a lot. Yes.
Thank you for letting
me, Chris. It definitely is.
And it's Sunday, I know, we're all chill, but I get hyped on this stuff,
and
you know?
It's definitely you do, and that is crucial. But I think what Neil is doing, and this is something I've struggled with personally too as well, Chris, what Neil is doing is creating a community. He is allowing people of multiple different perspectives to come together and share their ideas. It really is different than the sort of how do we get popular on YouTube model. And I don't mean that to disrespect you at all, because what you do is absolutely crucial, and I'm a huge fan. But what Neil is doing is really a round table where people like myself who have absolutely zero credentials whatsoever, but something to say, can come and communicate and contribute and create a community. So with warts all, you know, what Neil does is he says, I'm learning as I go, because he's not a video producer. He is he is a visionary. He's a visionary, and he's bringing his vision to the greater populace. And I understand that from a human perspective about Neil. And what I think all of us need to grasp, and if I may be so bold, and please forgive, you know, shoot me down if I'm talking shit, but the truth of the matter is that everyone has to have a voice in the new paradigm. We are all reacting to a total shift in the way we look at the universe and the world and ourselves. And every voice has to have air, and every voice has to be vetted, and every voice deserves an opportunity to come forward. And that's why Greg J is here. That's why Michael is here, and that's why Duffy is here, and that's why all of us are here, so that we can all have a voice at the table. But that table is messy, and the technology fails us, and that dirtiness of it is actually, in essence, the authenticity of it. And we cannot and should not undermine that authenticity.
You mean I'm not getting paid for this?
Yeah, no, sorry.
Neil is just...
man, I came here because I thought I was getting paid. No.
Neil is just propagating the same type of thought patterns that the Electric Universe guys started, Wallace Thornhill and David Talbot.
They have heart.
Let's talk with everybody. Let's get everybody's idea.
Yeah.
I was making a psychological
talk every Sunday.
I was really making a psychological point, really. I don't really think popularity is a thing at all. I don't think popularity means good. I just mean, like, in terms of making a note on the audience, by which, like, you're doing this show live and there are 50 people or whatever, 40 people watching. That engagement to me is very psychologically rich.
I noticed that as well.
To absorb. And so I find the interaction between the streamers and the streaming very fascinating. So I'm making a comment more on that, of like how that's interpreted. Like, what do people want? What do people want to hear? Maybe not in terms of getting followers and making money, but more about like people. Look. So I watch Walt Thornhill talk about hollow planets. And then that's it. It's in a void. Like, how can I ever get more talk about? Like, we can talk about it here, which is great, of course.
No, you've actually nailed it on the head.
People do want more. I want more. So I talk about more. Anyway, I don't mean to be greedy. It's more about like, I do progress. I've done the show for 4.5 years. I followed EU 6 years ago. Before that, it was 12 years of conspiracy junk on YouTube. Everybody is sort of hungry for it now. So I'm a huge
fan of you. You have to realize if you think I'm being critical of you,
not at all. And I don't mean to be defensive.
This is totally inside baseball. It really is.
So not being defensive.
So let us finish up before we have any further things with Greg here. But because I know he wants to go eat because he's getting hungry, and he was hungry half an hour ago. So I know that it's time to
you guys
make
are
the part.
Dedicated.
We are.
I give you a lot of credit. This has been I've had a great time.
But I want to
you want.
I want to actually
keep coming back
just
every Sunday, Greg. Keep coming back.
I'll do my
there.
best. On the weekends when I don't have my kids, I'll be here. You got to understand something.
Us, brother.
You might not know this because I don't really broadcast it, but my daughter is autistic. Okay.
Oh.
And she's a very low on the spectrum, very high functioning autistic, but she's got her way. And honestly, I think she come from the highest heaven because all she knows is love. Have you ever loved someone so much they could make you cry? Well, that's how much I love my daughter. And you know, when she's with me, she's high maintenance. She wants my attention.
Special attention.
So, you know,
attention.
Yeah. So, you know, and I give it to her. You know, we do all kinds of things together.
Hey, Greg, how old is she, Greg? How old is she?
She's 16.
Right. Well, I have a 15-year-old autistic son, so.
I mean, it's a gift. It's a gift from
Interesting.
God. It's a gift from God. I mean, yeah.
Cool. I understand.
She has taught me how to love.
Well,
the thought of anyone ever hurting her feelings makes me want to just, I don't know what I would do.
Oh, I know.
You know, and I know sooner or later she's going to be let down. And I just hope I'm there, you know?
Yeah.
I get worked up just thinking about it. I don't want anybody to ever hurt my baby, you know? And my son.
We love your heart, Greg. We love your heart.
Oh my God, I love you even more, Greg, than I did before.
Totally.
Dude. My arms are outstretched, and I'm giving you a great big virtual hug here.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, but so that with that said, every other weekend I'm free, like this weekend, you know.
All right.
So I could commit.
Well, come when you can, man, because
I'll come when I can. Yeah.
We love you, bro. We love you, and Kronos. Get your email to Neil somehow, some way. Get it through Discord. We want you on here too.
There's another guy who's really good. His name's Slightly Slanted Sleuth for the Truth. You gotta get to know him. He's slightly slanted sleuth for the truth. He's a good guy.
Slanted sleuth for the truth.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah,
well, that's nice. We'll keep that in mind. Well, this is it. Now that you've said that, and now we're not talking about your daughter, I was going to end the show with an idea of saying, basically, the reason that we're here, and thank you very much, Duffster, for putting that glowing recommendation. But one of the things that I want to do as a community is I have been asked to participate and help in so many things that I am unable to do all of them. And I know that these are great ideas. And I mean, it must feel the same way, because I know that when the Thunderbolts has something, it goes to so many people to try to answer these questions because they care. They're trying to get it out there. They're trying to help. But one email at a time one question at a time is just never going to do it in some cases. So this is why we're here. And if you need help with your project or your idea, or you want to help and you don't know where to fit in, we will try. We have a Discord channel to start. I mean, we now have enough people there, and I want to make sure that people feel that if I can't help you, I will direct you to someone who I think can, and there'll be other people who can too. And this is what we're all here for, to help each other, so that maybe just two people talking will suddenly have a wonderful idea, an idea that no one had before, and suddenly a whole new branch of EU science has opened up. Then this is how it happens. It doesn't happen just one guy sitting there with his world on his shoulders. So,
no, this is how we thrive.
Yeah,
this is how we ascend beyond surviving and implement the theory of thriving. We have to be conscious of and infuse our lives with behaviors of thriving, because the interloping forces are telling us to go into survival mode, and we have to resist that and continue to endeavor to thrive.
Well, I think
everyone can make a change, or one person can make a change, and everyone should try.
Everyone can make a video, and everyone should try.
I like that one. That's good.
I did, but I haven't done any videos for 3 years. Perhaps maybe I'll start.
Oh, maybe fire it up and get going. What are you waiting for?
Oh, and this also, by the way, talks to every one of the 47 people who are watching too. If you have something to say, feel free. We'll do our best to help you out.
Guys, I've had a great time. Really have. I'm going to enjoy watching this.
Thanks, Greg, for coming. You can drop out anytime.
No,
you
we're
like.
gonna. I'm gonna let everyone go here, guys. So
I'm gonna go eat.
Yeah, I'm gonna just hit the button and let everyone go.
Take care,
So
everybody. Video tonight. 8
love
o'clock.
you all. And video tonight, is that what's happening for you?
Yeah, Wallthorn Hill at its best.
Oh, awesome.
8 o'clock tonight or 9 o'clock EST.
Planets,
is that what you're saying?
Planets, stars, and plasma cosmology. And